Today we're talking about Halloween: The Missing Years, the Michael Myers movie that was never made. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, this is Mike from FearShop.com. Today we're talking about Halloween: The Missing Years, the Michael Myers movie that was never made. We're going to get into that in just a second, but I want to make sure that everyone is liking this video. So smash that like button right now. You're going to love this. I can guarantee that one. Also, make sure you're subscribed. A lot of people that are watching the videos aren't subscribed to the channel, so you're missing out on all the good stuff that's coming out. So leave your comments in the messages below. Also, hit that bell to set up notifications so you know when the next video drops. All right, Halloween: The Missing Years. What is it? So basically, there was a recent interview with Jake Wade-Wall, and he talked about his unproduced entry into the Halloween franchise that was meant to follow up 2002's Halloween Resurrection before Rob Zombie ultimately rebooted the series with his 2007 remake. All jokes aside, Halloween Resurrection was an interesting movie. We actually featured that in one of our Awesome or Awful videos as well, where we talked about, Michael Myers and the less than stellar Halloween Resurrection, in my opinion. So, basically, this film, had it been filmed, it would have been titled Halloween: The Missing Years, and it would have explored what happened to the shape, Michael Myers, during the years between Halloween 2 and Halloween 3. Of course, we had Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Huge fan of that film. I really liked it. But, as the interview went on, Jake Wade-Wall started talking about, what was Michael doing at that time? So basically, in the interview, Jake Wade-Wall talked about how he was hired to do the draft. The execs at the time told him that there was a pause on what to do with the Halloween franchise. So he had come up with the idea for The Missing Years, and basically said it's a completely different direction, but maybe it's a shot in the arm that was needed to keep the franchise going at the time. The studio responded to his take, and he was hired. Right? He wrote a script. He never got around to writing the full script, but basically he wrote a decent amount of it. A year or two after completing that part of the script, it was decided internally to hire Rob Zombie to do the remake. So The Missing Years would have been the last of the franchise before the remake/reboot that happened with Zombie. So what makes this script super interesting was that the inspiration was Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. His story centered around what happened to Michael Myers the year when the Season of the Witch took place. He wanted to somehow tie Halloween 3 into this movie, into the franchise as a whole, because, it's not like it's ever really talked about in any of the other movies. It was just kind of that forgotten film that was in there. So the original Halloween was the night he came home, but Jake Wade-Wall did a bit of a 180 on this one. His real home was the asylum, not the house where he had murdered his sister. It was actually where he grew up, right? The concept of The Missing Years was to begin the film by exploring a bit of his childhood in the asylum, fill in some of the places we didn't know about him, like why specifically that mask, and, just kind of fill in some of the lore that came specifically from that institution. Then it would cut to the present, which would be back then, of course, when Season of the Witch was unfolding. He never did address Season of the Witch specifically, but he filled in that there was a missing year, that he didn't come home. So where did he go? He went to Smith's Grove. He went to his real home. He was returning back to what was essentially the place he grew up during his formative years. It was basically going to be him wreaking havoc on the asylum. So Wade-Wall also talked about what would have happened if the film was successful, if there were plans for a follow-up. They thought about that a lot and had ideas to come up with 4 other movies at least. And there was a nice treatment where The Missing Years would completely lay out the path for Halloween 4 as well. So the full script never really got made, so nothing ever was really agreed upon. But it would have been kind of interesting. As a side note, I really thought one of the interesting concepts about the Star Wars Rogue One, and I'm really going off the rails here. I love how that movie played out, and all of a sudden it basically tied right into Star Wars, which would eventually become A New Hope. I mean, how cool would that have been to do something like that? Or even think about the Final Destination movie, where all of a sudden you see at the very end it goes all the way back full circle to the first part. I think that would have been kind of cool to do something like that. Just have kind of like a one-off movie. It's like, all right, here's Michael in this year. And guess what? Now we're starting off, in part 4. In an interview, Wade Wall goes on to talk about Michael would have the same mask because how iconic it was, even though Halloween 2's ending and its fallout was indeed addressed. It was discussed that after Halloween 2 finished, Michael needed medical attention, right? He's burnt, he's in the need of real care, and that's what switches the psyche off. He knows where he can actually get care, and that's his real home. So he goes back to Smith's Grove. Remember, there's no Curse of Thorns, so Michael wasn't going back there because of that. So why would he go back? And there was the working theory of there was a nurse there that he was fond of. So in the script, she was the one person that, for whatever reason, didn't treat him like a monster. She treated him like a human. That would kind of be interesting to play with, right? There's something within him that can remember kindness. There's, it's something to play around with just a little, I think. It's not something you can carry the movie on. Michael is pure evil. So giving him a soft side would not sit well with fans. You've seen an instance or two in other movies where Michael shows a human side. That lasts for mere seconds, right? He's supposed to be the evil being, and being that evil being, it's not going to be able to last for very long, right? So one of the things that I really enjoyed is the script starts playing around with familiar characters from the first 2 films as well. Loomis, of course, was in there, right? Jimmy from Halloween 2 was in there. I mean, this guy just was, a major player in the movie and then just kind of got forgotten about. It was kind of a shame. It would have been cool to see what would happen and other survivors from the first 2 films, and like how they played a part in this one. I think that would have been so awesome. I remember how much I geeked out when Halloween 6 brought back Tommy Doyle, right? Everyone was stoked for H2O and Jamie Lee Curtis's return again in Halloween 2018, because unfortunately, Jamie Lee Curtis dies in Resurrection. The series does have just a few twists and turns here and there. I did a video before of trying to explain the Halloween timeline and how it all plays together, and which movies are sequels to which timelines and things of that nature. Halloween is one of the wildest ones out there with all these divergent timelines. But, I think having a movie that actually tries to piece things together at some point, as long as they're not trying to piece together like why Busta Rhymes was one of the ones that actually beat Michael Myers. Still holding a sore spot for that one myself. But anyways, Wade Wall was talking about what type of movie that The Missing Years would be. Would it be an exercise in suspense like the original, or more of a bloody slasher like some of the later sequels were? While Wade Wall is all for slashers with clever kills, The Missing Years was a return to form from the original, which was loaded with suspense. The later ones, I love... I knock Resurrection all the time, right? Because to me, it is definitely the low point in the series. A lot of people think Halloween 6 is the low part of the series. But when you watch Halloween 1 and then watch the later films, especially like Resurrection, it's just Resurrection's pure slasher, whereas the first Halloween labeled as a slasher, and, it was... A lot of people will say the origination of a modern slasher in 78, but, the 80s were loaded with slashers. It definitely was not the first slasher, but it was the one that was talked about as being the movie that made slashers a lot more popular in the 80s, right? So Wade Wall was like, I'm all for all the other movies, all for slashers and all, but really want to be like the original Halloween, which is just loaded with suspense, right? There's not there are a lot of kills, but it's not the kills that, it's not him going around that people remember. What they really remember is the end of the movie. He just keeps coming back, right? There's a lot of individual scenes that people remember, like Michael with the sheet over him like a ghost and things like that. But to me, what really got me, and what got me into the franchise, what got me into this movie, which scared the hell out of me as a kid and gave me nightmares, was Michael just kept coming back, right? And that wasn't kills. That was just suspense. The music on top of this imagery, it was just amazing. So, what would have made all of this more exciting is just how much of a horror nerd, and more specifically a Halloween nerd, that Jake Wall was and is, right? Still talking about this stuff to this day. It makes for good interviews, but he's not exactly reaping too many rewards out of this. But at the end of the day, I really wish that there were a lot more writers and directors that were more fans of the genre and, lived and breathed it. And I think it would have been awesome. But, just as much as, I'm a nerd for this series, it would have been great to see some nerd just come in there with these great ideas that would have been executed on. All right, so that's it for this episode. Let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think about Halloween and Missing Years. How much you would have loved to see. What kind of twists would you put into the story if you were writing a film like that? All right. Make sure you're leaving your comments. Make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're hitting that bell to set up notifications. Most of all, just make sure you keep it horror.